Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. God bless you. I hope everyone is doing well today and has received lots of blessings to be thankful to our God in heaven for. Today we're going to be in the book of 2 Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 10, verse 12. The massacre of the princes of Judah. Jehu then set out for Samaria. As he was on his way at Beth-eged of the shepherds, he met the brothers of Ahaziah, king of Judah. "Who are you?" he asked. "We are Ahaziah's brothers," they replied, "and we are on our way to pay our respects to the king's sons and the queen mother's sons." "Take them alive," he said. They took them alive, and he slaughtered them at the storage well of Beth-eged. 42 of them. He did not spare a single one. Jehu and Jehonadab. Leaving there, he came to Jehonadab, son of Rechab, who was on his way to meet him. He greeted him and said, "Is your heart true to mine, as my heart is to yours?" Jehonadab replied, "Yes." "If so," Jehu said, "give me your hand." Jehonadab gave him his hand, and Jehu took him up beside him in his chariot. "Come with me," he said, "and witness my zeal for Yahweh," and took him along in his chariot. When he entered Samaria, he killed all the survivors of Ahab's family there. He destroyed it, as Yahweh had told Elijah it would happen. The destruction of Baal's adherents and temple. Then Jehu assembled all the people. "Ahab did Baal some small service," he said, "but Jehu will do him a great one. Now call me all the prophets of Baal and all his priests. Not one is to be absent. I have a great sacrifice to offer to Baal. If anyone is absent, he will forfeit his life." This was a trick on Jehu's part, to destroy the devotees of Baal. "Summon a sacred assembly for Baal," he commanded, and they summoned it. Jehu sent messengers throughout Israel, and all the devotees of Baal arrived. Not a man was left who did not attend. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from wall to wall. Jehu then said to the keeper of the wardrobe, "Bring out vestments for all the devotees of Baal." He brought out the vestments for them. Jehu then went into the temple of Baal with Jehonadab, son of Rechab, and said to Baal's devotees, "Make quite sure that there are no devotees of Yahweh in here with you, but only devotees of Baal." He then proceeded to present sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had stationed 80 of his men outside, having said, "Whoever lets one of the people go whom I am now putting within your clutches will pay for it with his life." When he had finished making the burnt offering, he gave the order to the guards and inquirers, "Go in, strike them down, let not one go." The guards and the inquirers went in, putting everyone to the sword all the way to the sanctuary of Baal's temple. They took the sacred pole out of Baal's temple and burned it. They demolished Baal's image and demolished Baal's temple too, making it a latrine, which it still is today. The reign of Jehu in Israel, 841 to 814. Thus Jehu rid Israel of Baal. Even so, Jehu did not give up the sins into which Jeroboam son of Nebat had led Israel, the golden calves of Bethel and Dan. Yahweh said to Jehu, "Since you have done well in carrying out what pleases me, and have done everything I required to be done to the house of Ahab, your sons will occupy the throne of Israel down to the 4th generation." Jehu, however, did not faithfully and wholeheartedly follow the law of Yahweh, God of Israel. He did not give up the sins into which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel. At that time Yahweh began to whittle Israel down, and Hazael defeated the Israelites throughout the territory east of the Jordan, the whole territory of Gilead of the Gadites, and the Reubenites, and the Manassites, from Aor on the river Arnon, Gilead, and Bashan. The rest of the history of Jehu, his entire career and all his prowess, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Then he fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria. His son Jehoahaz succeeded him. Jehu's reign over Israel in Samaria lasted 28 years. Section F. From the reign of Athaliah to the death of Elisha. Oh, Elisha's going to die. Athaliah, 841 to 835. When Athaliah, mother of Hazaziah, learned that her son was dead, she promptly murdered all those of royal stock. But Jehosheba, daughter of King Jehoram, and sister of Ahaziah, surreptitiously rescued Joash, son of Ahijah, from among the princes who were to be murdered, and put him with his nurse in the sleeping quarters. In this way she did hide him from Athaliah, and he was not killed. He stayed hidden with her in the temple of Yahweh for 6 years. Then Athaliah governed the country, or while Athaliah governed the country. In the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the regimental commanders of the Carians and the guards, and had them brought to him in the temple of Yahweh. He made a pact with them, put them on an oath, then showed them the king's son. He gave them this order: "This is what you must do. A third of you who come on duty on the Sabbath must mount guard at the royal palace, and your 2 other sections who come off duty on the Sabbath and mount guard at the temple of Yahweh must surround the king, each man with his weapons in his hand. Anyone forcing his way through the ranks is to be killed, and you will escort the king as he leaves and as he comes in." The regimental commanders did everything as Jehoiada the priest had ordered, and each one brought his men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty on the Sabbath, and reported to Jehoiada the priest. The priest then issued the regimental commanders with King David's spears and shields, which were kept in the temple of Yahweh. The guards then took position, each man with his weapons in his hand, from the south corner of the temple to the north corner of the temple, all around the altar and the temple. Then Jehoiada brought the king's son out, crowned him, and gave him a copy of the covenant, and they made him king and anointed him. And they clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king!" On hearing the people shouting, Athaliah joined the people in the temple of Yahweh. When she looked, there stood the king on a dais, as custom was, with the officers and trumpeters at the king's side. and all the people of the country rejoicing and blowing the trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada the priest then gave the orders to commanders in charge of the troops: "Take her out, under guard, and put to death anyone who follows her." For the priest had already said, "She must not be killed inside the temple of Yahweh." They seized her, and when she reached the horses' entry to the palace, she was killed there. Jehoiada made a covenant between Yahweh, the king, and the people that they would remain Yahweh's people, and another one between the king and the people. All the people of the country then went to the temple of Baal and demolished it. They smashed its altars and its images and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. The priest made arrangements for the security of the temple of Yahweh. He then took the regimental commanders, the Carians, the guards, and the people of the country, and they escorted the king down from the temple of Yahweh. Entering the palace through the gate of the guards, Jehoash took his seat on the throne of the kings. All the people of the country were delighted. The city, however, made no move, and Athaliah was put to death inside the palace. Chapter 12. The reign of Joash in Judah, 835 to 796. Now, you may wonder, why are these numbers going backwards? Well, because before Christ, everything is counting down to Christ. After Christ, the numbers start ascending again, the dates. So, chapter 12. Joash was 7 years old when he came to the throne. Joash became king in the 7th year of Jehu, and reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. All his life, Joash did what Yahweh regards as right, having been instructed by Jehoiada, the priest. The high places, however, were not abolished, and the people still offered sacrifices and incense on the high places. Jehoash said to the priest, "All the money from the sacred revenues brought to the temple of Yahweh, the money from personal taxes, and all the money voluntarily offered to the temple, the priests are to receive this individually from the people of their acquaintance, and will carry out all the repairs to the temple which need to be made." Now in the 23rd year of King Joash, the priests had done no repairs to the temple. So King Joash summoned Jehoiada, the priest, and other priests. "Why are you not repairing the temple?" he asked. "You are no longer to accept money from people of your acquaintance, but are to hand it over to the temple repairs." The priest agreed to accept no money from the people, and no longer to be responsible for repairs to the temple. Jehoiada the priest took a chest, bored a hole in the lid, and placed it beside the beside the pillar, to the right of the entry of the temple of Yahweh. In it the priest who guarded the threshold put all the money which was given for the temple of Yahweh. Whenever they saw that there was a great deal of money in the chest, the king's secretary would come, and they would empty it out and reckon the money then in the temple of Yahweh. Once checked, they paid this money over to the masters of works attached to the temple of Yahweh, and these in turn spent it on carpenters and builders working on the temple of Yahweh, on masons and stone cutters, and on buying timber and dressed stone to be used for repairs to the temple of Yahweh. In short, for all the cost of the temple repairs. But no silver basins, knives, sprinkling bowls, trumpets, or gold or silver objects were made for the temple of Yahweh out of the money presented, which was all given to the masters of works for repairing the temple of Yahweh. No accounts were kept with the men to whom the money was paid over to be spent on the workmen, since they were honest. They were honest in their work. Money offered in expiation of an offense, of a sin, was not given to the temple of Yahweh. That was for the priest. At that time, Hazael, king of Aram, went to war against Gath and captured it. He then prepared to attack Jerusalem. Joash, king of Judah, took all the sacred offerings dedicated by his ancestors, the kings of Judah, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Hazahiah, with those which he himself had dedicated, and all the gold which was to be found in the treasuries of the temple of Yahweh and of the palace. He sent it all to Hazael, king of Aram, who retired from Jerusalem. The rest of the history of Joash, his entire career, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? His own retainers rebelled and hatched a plot. They murdered Joash in the palace of Milo. Jozachar, son of Shemieth, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, were the retainers who struck the blows from which he died. He was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His son, Amaziah, succeeded him. Ooh, and we've gone way over. But that takes us all the way to chapter 13. Sometimes the story is just so good I get lost in it. Please forgive me for going over. I try to stay around 15 minutes. So, we will continue tomorrow, God willing. And as always, I love you.